Hi guys, I'm going to introduce to you hypothesis testing. So what is hypothesis testing? Hypothesis testing is a strategical method that is used in making decisions using experimental data. It is basically an assumption that we make about population parameter. There are common phrases in hypothesis testing. We have here greater than, or is greater than, is above, is higher than, is longer than, is bigger than, or is increased. We also have less than, or is less than, is below, is lower than, is shorter than, is smaller than, is decreased or reduced from. We also have greater than equal, or is greater than equal to, is at least, is not less than. We also have here less than equal, or is less than equal to, is at most, is not more than. Next is equal, or is equal to, is exactly the same as, has not changed from, is the same as. Lastly is not equal, or is not equal to, is different from, has changed from, is not the same as. Hypothesis testing has 5 procedures. The first step is the null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis. Second is the level of significance. Third is the test strategical. Fourth is the decision rule. And last, making a decision.
Step 1. 2 types of statistical hypothesis. First is the null hypothesis. Second is the alternative hypothesis. So what is the difference between alternative and null hypothesis? So in null hypothesis, it symbolizes the H have 0 or H have O. So you can see here, mu sub 1 is equals to mu sub 2. So sa null hypothesis, kapag nabanggit doon na equal, automatically ang claim ng isang researcher is mapupunta sa null hypothesis. Bakit? Kasi equal nga siya. So it means na it shows that there is no difference between the two population means or parameter. So paano naman if na-reject yung null hypothesis? Mapupunta siya sa alternative hypothesis. So, ang alternative hypothesis, it symbolizes naman by H sub 1. It means yung mu sub 1 is not equal to mu sub 2, or mu sub 1 is greater than or equal than mu sub 2, or mu sub 1 is less than or equal than mu sub 2. So this shows that there is a difference between two population means or parameter. So kapag again, null hypothesis na-reject, ang alternative hypothesis ang ma-accept. If alternative hypothesis naman ang na-reject, null hypothesis naman ang ma-accept. So that is the difference between the null hypothesis and the alternative hypothesis.
Hi guys, we are now to the step 2 of the hypothesis testing. So our second step is the level of significance. So the level of significance is the probability of rejecting the null hypothesis when it is actually true. Level of significance is only the area in the two tails. So sometimes the level of significance is given in the problem. So as you can see, I chooses the 0.05 level of significance because it is the most common level of significance. And as you can see, these two tails are symmetrical, so they have the same area level. And if we combine the 0.025 and the other side is 0.025, we can get our significance level, which is 0.05. And as you can also see inside the fence is we have the 0.95. So our now next step is to find the critical value using the z-test. So the critical value are just the z-values that separate the area that is shaded with red area of the tail and the middle area.
Step 3. The test statistic. The test statistic is a value determined from sample information, used to determine whether or not to reject the null hypothesis. It takes your data from an experiment or survey and compares your result to the result you would expect from the null hypothesis. This is the C-test statistic formula. When you run a hypothesis test, you will use a distribution like a t-distribution or normal distribution. These have a known area and enable you to calculate a probability value, or what we call p-value, that will tell you if your results are due to chance or if your results are tied to your theory being correct. The larger the test statistic, the smaller the p-value, and the more likely you are to reject a null hypothesis. Step 4. The decision rule. A decision rule is a declaration of the situations under which the null hypothesis is rejected or not rejected. The rejected region describes the location of all those values that are so small or large that the probability of their occurrence under a true null hypothesis is rather slim. The dividing point between the region where the null hypothesis is rejected and the region where it is not rejected is called the critical value.
Step 5. Making a decision. This is the final step in hypothesis. It should be noted that the decision whether or not to reject is one made by statistician conducting the research. So, dito sa final step ng hypothesis, doon ka na magde-decide kung i-reject mo yung ginawa mong hypothesis. Tapos, he or she states the null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis, decides on the level of significance, selects a sample, and make a clear decision whether or not to reject the null hypothesis. So, dito, ipapakilala mo na yung null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis. Magde-decide ka kung whether sa level ng significance, sa pagsiselect ng samples, and pagbuo mo ng decision kung i-reject mo yung hypothesis. The statistician makes a recommendation based on this sample evidence.
There are two types of test significance: one-tailed test and two-tailed test. Two-tailed hypothesis tests are also known as non-directional and two-sided tests because you can test for effects in both directions. When you perform a two-tailed test, you split the significance level percentage between both tails for distribution. The advantage of two-tailed tests is that you can detect both positive and negative effects. Two-tailed tests are standard to scientific research, where discovering any type of effect is usually of interest. One-tailed hypothesis tests are also known as directional and one-sided tests because you can test for effects in only one direction. When you perform a one-tailed test, the entire significance level percentage goes into the extreme end of one tail of the distribution. The advantage of one-tailed tests have more statistical power to detect an effect in one direction than a two-tailed test, with the same design and same significance level. The disadvantage of one-tailed hypothesis test is that it has no statistical power to detect an effect to the other direction.